Alex and I were really excited about our weekend in the mountains. As his wife, I had taken the lead in finding us a cozy cabin on Airbnb. It had everything we needed: a cozy living room with a fireplace and a kitchen on the ground floor, plus 2 small bedrooms upstairs. The drive to the cabin was great. We saw some wildlife and enjoyed the scenery. When we got there, the place looked just as good as the photos. It was tucked away between tall trees, and the mountain view was amazing. After settling in, we spent the afternoon walking around. We found a stream and saw some rabbits. It was so peaceful, just what we wanted. We cooked spaghetti for dinner and enjoyed it by the fireplace, happy to be away from the hustle of the city. We went to bed early. The cabin was old, and the wooden floors creaked under our feet. The bedrooms were small, but the beds were comfy, covered in thick quilts. Just as we were falling asleep, a strange noise woke me up. It sounded like someone walking in the living room downstairs. I tried to tell myself it was nothing, maybe just the house settling. But the sound of footsteps continued. I woke Alex up. We both listened. The footsteps stopped, then there was a soft thud, like someone bumping into something. We were scared but tried to stay calm. Alex decided we should check it out. I didn't want to stay alone, so I followed him. We turned on the hallway lights and went downstairs. The living room was empty, just as we left it. The kitchen, bathroom, and the other bedroom were also empty. No one was there. The front door was locked from the inside and all the windows were shut tight. We couldn't figure out what made the noise. Maybe an animal outside, or the old cabin was just creaky. We tried to joke about it to make ourselves feel better, but honestly, we were both a bit spooked. The cabin didn't feel as cozy anymore. It felt like it was hiding secrets. Back in bed, we tried to sleep, but it was hard. Every little noise seemed strange and scary. The wind outside, the cabin making sounds, it all made us nervous. We knew it was going to be a long night. Trying to convince ourselves it was just the wind or an animal, we went back to bed. But sleep was hard to come by. Less than an hour later, a creak from the other room startled us. It sounded exactly like someone sitting down on the bed there. Alex got up slowly and tiptoed to the door. He turned on the light in the hallway and peeked into the other room. The door was wide open, even though he had closed it before. He switched on the light in that room, but it was empty, just like before. We checked every corner again, looking under beds and in closets. Everything was still locked from the inside. We couldn't find anything out of place. It was weird and really scary. We didn't know what else to do, so we moved a chair against our bedroom door. We thought if anyone tried to come in, the noise would wake us up. We barely slept, jumping at every little sound. In the morning, we were hoping things would seem better. But when we went downstairs, we got a shock. The front door was slightly open. We had checked it many times the night before, and it was always closed. Someone must have opened it from inside. We didn't want to stay any longer. We packed our stuff and left as quickly as we could. On the way, we called the cabin owner to tell him what happened. He didn't seem too worried. He said maybe we forgot to close the door and an animal got in, but we knew that wasn't true. The drive home was quiet. We kept thinking about the cabin. Who was there with us, and why didn't they take anything or leave any signs? It felt like they were just there to scare us. We never found out what really happened that night. I was on this work trip, and I had to stay in another state for a few days. I found this small studio apartment online on Airbnb. It was cheap and in a quiet area. Perfect for someone like me who just needed a place to crash after work. I got there around 6 p.m. The check-in was easy. They sent me a code for the door lock. The apartment was tiny, but it had everything I needed: a double bed, a TV, a couple of chairs, and a small kitchen. After dropping off my bags, I grabbed a quick bite to eat from a nearby diner. When I got back, I spent some time watching a TV series to unwind. It was just some random show, but it helped me relax. Just as I was getting sleepy, something weird happened. I heard someone outside trying to enter a code on the door lock. There was this long beep each time, telling me they got the code wrong. I was a bit confused. Why would someone be trying to get into my apartment? Curious, I paused the TV show and walked over to the door. I looked through the peephole and saw 3 guys standing there. One of them was middle-aged and had a small backpack. Another guy looked a bit older and didn't have any luggage. The third guy was just leaning against the wall, looking bored. I wasn't sure what to do, but I decided to ask them what was up. I opened the door just a crack and said, "Hey, what do you guys want?" They seemed surprised to see me. They looked at each other, and the guy with the backpack said, "Sorry, wrong door," and then they just left. I thought it was a bit odd, but I figured it was an honest mistake. The building had lots of similar apartments that looked the same, probably all Airbnb rentals like mine. So I just shrugged it off and went back to finish my show. Soon after, I felt really tired and decided to call it a night. I remember thinking as I drifted off, the apartments here is so small. How could they think 3 people were staying here? In the middle of the night, something woke me up. It was the sound of the door creaking open. Now, that's not something you expect to hear, especially after what happened earlier. I was lying in bed, and there's this small partition wall, so I couldn't see the door from where I was. But I could hear footsteps. Someone was definitely walking into the apartment. I didn't waste any time. I jumped out of bed, ready to deal with whoever it was. "Who are you? What do you want?" I yelled, trying to sound as tough as I could. Standing in the corridor was a guy wearing dark clothes. It was too dim to see his face clearly. We both just stood there for a second, kind of sizing each other up. I grabbed my phone and shouted, "Leave, or I'm calling the police." I meant it too. The guy in the corridor didn't seem as apologetic or confused as you'd expect from someone who's made an innocent mistake. Instead, there was a brief flash of annoyance on his face before he quickly masked it with an awkward smile. "Sorry, wrong door again," he said, but his tone was more dismissive than apologetic. Then he turned and swiftly left the apartment. I was wide awake by then and feeling pretty rattled. I went to the door, locked it, and watched through the peephole. Those 3 guys were walking away. I knew something wasn't right. Why would they come back again after earlier? I tried to call the host of the Airbnb, but got no answer. That's when I decided I couldn't stay there any longer. It didn't feel safe. I packed up my stuff as fast as I could, called an Uber, and got out of there. The whole ride to the hotel, I kept thinking about those guys. What were they after? Was it just a mix-up or something more? Anyway, I made it to the hotel, checked in, and finally got some sleep. The next day, I told my co-workers about what happened. They were as baffled as I was. But, I was just glad to be out of that apartment and safe. It was a strange night for sure. Last year, my friends and I finished our first year of college. To celebrate, we rented this cool lake house on Airbnb. It was hidden away by a lake, surrounded by lots of trees, and really far from any neighbors. On our first night, we made a big campfire by the lake. We were laughing, joking around, and telling spooky stories. I was super tired from setting up everything earlier that day, so I decided to head to bed early. My room was on the ground floor with a big window that looked out to the forest. I crashed as soon as my head hit the pillow. In the middle of the night, I woke up thirsty and decided to sneak into the kitchen for a glass of water. The house was quiet, and I assumed everyone was asleep. The kitchen was dimly lit by the moonlight streaming through the windows. I found a glass and filled it with water from the tap. As I drank, I noticed that the door to one of the ground floor rooms was open. Curious, I peeked inside, but the room was empty. A strange feeling settled in my stomach. Where were my friends? I decided to check the rest of the house. The living room was just as I had left it, with the embers of the fire still glowing outside. I walked up the stairs to the second floor, where 2 more bedrooms were located. To my surprise, they were empty too. Confused and a bit worried, I went back to my room to get my phone. Maybe they had texted me about where they were. But as I passed through the living room, I glanced out the window and saw a figure standing near the dying fire. He was tall, dressed in a dark hoodie and black cap, almost blending into the night. I ducked behind a wall. I watched as the figure moved cautiously, looking into each window on the ground floor. I felt a chill run down my spine. Who was this person, and what did they want? When I reached my room, finding my phone turned into a mini treasure hunt. I searched through the pockets of my jeans, checked under the bed, and finally found my phone hidden under a shirt on the dresser. As I grabbed my phone, a faint creaking sound from the front door made me pause. It was followed by hushed whispers. These weren't the voices of my friends. I edged toward my bedroom door, which was slightly open, and peered out. In the dim light, I could see two figures in the living room, hurriedly going through our stuff. Panic hit me hard. My first instinct was to call my friends. I dialed their numbers, but got no response. They must have been out of reach. I could hear the burglars moving closer to my room. In a moment of fear, I yelled, "Get away, I'm calling the cops." The footsteps stopped. After a tense second, the burglars rushed out the front door. I stayed frozen in place for a moment, then ran to the door and locked it. My hands were shaking so much I could barely turn the key. I tried calling my friends again. This time they answered. When I told them about the break-in, they were shocked. They quickly explained that they were at the lake and said they were coming back right away before hanging up. I waited, pacing around, every noise making me jump. The house felt big and empty, and I kept looking over my shoulder, expecting the worst. Finally, I heard my friends outside. I rushed to the door and let them in. They were wet from their swim and looked visibly worried. We all huddled in the living room, and I quickly recounted everything that had happened. They immediately started checking their belongings. A couple of backpacks, some cash, a laptop, a brand new Nintendo Switch, and a few personal items were missing, but thankfully, nothing irreplaceable was gone. We decided it was best to call the police. Due to the remote location of the cabin, it took a while for the officers to arrive. When they finally did, they began their investigation immediately. They took our statements and thoroughly checked around the house, looking for any clues the burglars might have left behind. After the police left, we talked about what had happened. We realized the burglars must have been watching the house. They saw us all head to the lake and thought the house was empty. They didn't expect me to be there. We also figured out that in the excitement of the swim, my friends hadn't properly closed the front door, making it easy for the burglars to enter. Despite the scare, we decided to stay for the rest of the weekend, but took extra safety measures. We made sure all doors and windows were locked at night, and we didn't all leave the house at the same time. When we left the lake house, we promised each other we'd do something similar every year, a tradition to mark the end of each college year. But we also agreed to choose a place a little less isolated next time. This adventure had been a little too exciting for our liking.